When everything around you begins to shift, when what once made sense suddenly feels uncertain, when people who used to walk beside you begin to fade away, listen closely, because heaven is speaking. These are not the signs of loss, these are the birth pangs of blessing. Before every divine release, there is a divine rearrangement. And before God gives you what you've been praying for, He will remove what's been holding you back. Many of you are standing in a silent season wondering, God, where are you? You pray and the heavens seem like brass. You wait, but there is no answer. Yet this is the very proof that God is working behind the veil. When the seed is buried beneath the soil, you cannot see its growth. But the darkness is where the roots are formed. The silence of God is not His absence, it is His strategy. He hides Himself so your faith can grow stronger than your feelings. When heaven grows quiet, it is a sign that God is building something in you that noise could destroy. Then there comes the moment when your heart begins to detach from things that once defined your joy. You wake up one day and realize that certain desires no longer satisfy you. Certain friendships no longer fit your spirit. Certain pursuits feel empty, no matter how much you try to make them work. That detachment is not failure, it is deliverance. God is weaning you from what you thought you needed so you can depend entirely on Him. Emotional detachment is not a loss of love, it is the birth of spiritual strength. It means your soul has matured beyond the need for constant validation. It means your heart is learning to stand where only faith can hold you. And when you begin to feel a stirring, a restlessness deep in your spirit, it's a holy signal. You may not know what's coming, but you can feel something shifting within. You sense that where you are can no longer contain what God placed in you. That's not anxiety, that's expansion. You're not being unsettled, you're being upgraded. God never leaves you comfortable when He's about to enlarge your territory. He stirs your spirit before He shifts your season. Soon you'll notice a divine isolation. People may misunderstand you. Opportunities you relied on may vanish. The noise around you may die down. But don't misinterpret solitude as rejection. God separates those He intends to elevate. Before He reveals your promise, He refines your purpose. The caterpillar must go into the cocoon alone. No one can go through that transformation for you. So when you find yourself walking alone, it's not loneliness, it's consecration. Heaven is setting you apart for something that eyes have not seen. And finally, when your resources begin to thin, when your plans no longer work, when every door you try to open stays shut, lift your eyes because your trust is being tested. God will remove visible support to teach you invisible dependence. When everything around you fails, that's when faith becomes sight within your heart. He is not trying to break you. He is teaching you to lean only on Him. For when you no longer rely on people, positions, or plans, you will discover the God who never fails. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, detachment, discontent, isolation, or testing, rejoice. Heaven has marked you for transformation. These are not random struggles, they are prophetic signs. You are being stripped, not for shame, but for strength. Because when God is about to bless you, He first blesses your inner life, your faith, your focus, your foundation. And once those are ready, the blessing will not just come to you, it will flow through you. When God becomes silent, it often feels like the most painful and confusing season of a believer's journey. You pray, yet there is no echo. You seek His voice, but the heavens seem shut. You look for signs, but all you find is stillness. Many mistake this silence as abandonment, but it is one of the clearest indicators that something sacred is happening beneath His surface. God's silence is not rejection, it is refinement. When He hides, He is not gone. He is deepening your roots. Just as a teacher remains quiet during the test, God withdraws His voice not to distance Himself, but to develop the faith that can stand without constant reassurance. In moments of divine silence, God is shifting your dependence. He is moving you from relying on feelings to relying on faith. He is teaching you to trust His heart even when you cannot trace His hand. The silence forces you to look inward, to remember what He already said before the silence began. It's in these quiet intervals that the word you once heard is tested and strengthened. The silence becomes a sacred classroom where God molds patience, endurance, and maturity. You learn that faith isn't proven when you hear Him. It's proven when you don't. The reason God often speaks less before a major blessing is because He is finalizing what you cannot yet handle. He hides His process so that your impatience does not interfere with His perfection. Just as a builder covers the foundation before constructing the house, God conceals His work until it is ready to be revealed. The silence is protection. It shields you from premature exposure. You think He is delaying, but He is designing. You think He has forgotten, but He is finishing. In the silence, distractions are removed. Noise is stripped away. The opinions of people fade into insignificance. It is in this sacred quiet that your spirit begins to discern what truly matters. You start to sense the still small voice within, the one that leads rather than pleads. The silence becomes the sound of growth, the hum of destiny taking form. When God is silent, heaven is not asleep. It is aligning everything in divine order. His silence is a sign that your faith is being elevated to the level of your coming blessing. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God begins to remove the attachments that once defined their comfort and identity. It feels as if everything familiar starts to loosen its grip. Relationships shift, desires change, and passions that once burned intensely begin to fade. This detachment can be confusing, even painful, because the very things that once seemed like blessings now feel like burdens. But this process is not rejection, it is preparation. When God begins to detach you from what no longer serves your purpose, it means your spirit is outgrowing its old environment. Just as a bird cannot remain in the nest forever, your soul cannot stay bound to what was only meant for a previous season. God understands that attachments can become anchors. We hold tightly to people, habits, or dreams that once carried us, unaware that they now confine us. So in His mercy, He begins to remove your dependence on them. He stirs discomfort where there was once peace, not to hurt you, but to awaken you. Detachment is a divine operation, a gentle but firm cutting away of everything that limits your capacity to receive something greater. The more you resist it, the more painful it feels. But when you surrender, you begin to see that God is not taking something from you, He is freeing you for something new. Emotional detachment is a mark of spiritual maturity. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you no longer depend on external things to define your worth or happiness. It's the place where you learn to love without needing control, to give without expecting return, to walk away without resentment. Detachment is not indifference. It is inner freedom. It's when your peace no longer depends on outcomes, because your heart is anchored in God alone. You start to see that your joy doesn't come from what's around you, but from who is within you. When God detaches you, He is building a deeper confidence in His sovereignty. He removes what you cling to so that your hands are empty enough to receive what He has prepared. Every detachment is divine evidence that your faith is maturing and your destiny is nearing. What feels like loss is actually liberation. What feels like separation is sacred alignment. There are seasons when your soul begins to feel an uneasiness that you cannot explain. What once fulfilled you now feels too small. What used to inspire you now seems ordinary. You may try to force excitement, to reignite passion for what you once loved, but deep down something has shifted. That restlessness is not rebellion, it is revelation. It is the gentle stirring of the Spirit, letting you know that you have reached the borders of your current assignment. God places a holy discontent in your heart, not to frustrate you, but to move you. It is His way of telling you that the season you are in can no longer contain the greatness He has placed within you. When God begins to enlarge your destiny, He first awakens your spirit. Suddenly, comfort feels constricting. The conversations, environments, and habits that once made sense begin to feel too small for your growing faith. This inner tension is divine. It's the evidence that your spirit is alive and moving towards something greater. God never allows His children to remain stagnant. He disturbs your peace so that He can expand your purpose. The very dissatisfaction you are feeling is the sign that something greater is calling you forward. You are being stretched to match the size of your next blessing. This holy discontent is sacred because it realigns your desires with heaven's design. It breaks the illusion that success equals satisfaction and brings you back to dependence on divine direction. You may not see the full picture, but the uneasiness pushes you to seek God more earnestly. It ignites prayer, revives hunger, and stirs expectation. It reminds you that the life of faith is not about settling, but about evolving. What feels like confusion is often a calling in disguise, a whisper from eternity saying, there's more for you. In every great transition, God first allows your current level to lose its flavor so that you won't be tempted to stay. He makes you restless where you once were comfortable, so your heart begins to long for what is next. That longing is not impatience, it's preparation. The stirring in your spirit is proof that heaven is repositioning you. Your discontent is the divine signal that change is near and that you are standing on the threshold of a greater season. There comes a time when God begins to pull you away from the noise, the crowd, and the familiar rhythm of life. You may not understand it at first because isolation often feels like punishment, but in truth, it is preparation. When God isolates you, He is not cutting you off. He is setting you apart. The people who once surrounded you may drift away. The platforms that once elevated you may no longer be available, and the recognition that once affirmed you may fade. Yet in that quiet place, something sacred is being formed. God withdraws you from the crowd to refine your focus, purify your motives, and strengthen your intimacy with Him. In isolation, the heart becomes clear. You begin to see where you've depended too much on human applause and too little on divine approval. You start to realize that your worth is not found in how many people notice you, but in how deeply God knows you. This separation is never about rejection, it is about revelation. God uses solitude to reveal the parts of your character that need healing, the patterns of thinking that need renewing, and the inner strength that needs awakening. While others may still be rushing in the noise of activity, you are being shaped in the stillness of divine encounter. Every great calling is birthed in hiddenness. Before God reveals you publicly, He refines you privately. He took Moses into the wilderness before sending him to Pharaoh. He separated David from the palace before making him king. He sent Jesus into the desert before He began His ministry. The pattern has never changed. God isolates before He elevates. The quiet season is not wasted time. It is sacred training. The voice of God becomes clearer when the voices of people grow faint. It is in this divine isolation that you learn to hear, to discern, and to obey without hesitation. You learn that true purpose doesn't need to be seen to be real. The hidden place becomes the holy place where your roots go deep enough to sustain the weight of your destiny. God draws you away from distractions so that you can see Him without interference and trust Him without doubt. What feels like loneliness is often the holy ground of transformation, where your calling takes shape and your spirit is prepared for the blessing to come. There comes a stage in every walk of faith when God begins to test your trust by removing the visible support you once relied upon. The resources that used to sustain you begin to dry up. The people you thought you could count on suddenly withdraw. The opportunities that once came easily now seem out of reach. It feels like everything familiar is slipping through your fingers, but this is not a sign of abandonment. It is the refining of your trust. God is teaching you to depend on Him in ways you never have before. He removes the evidence so that faith can become your evidence. He takes away what you can see so that your spirit learns to rest in what you cannot. When you have something to fall back on, trust remains conditional. But when every crutch is removed, faith becomes pure. God often tests trust by creating circumstances where your logic fails, your plans collapse, and your control disappears. It is there, in the tension between fear and faith, that your relationship with Him deepens. Trust is not built in moments of clarity. It is built in moments of confusion. It is when you cannot understand, yet you still choose to believe that heaven sees the strength of your spirit. This testing of trust is sacred because it transforms belief into conviction. It pushes your faith from words to reality. You begin to realize that God is not only the giver of blessings, He is the blessing Himself. You start to look less at outcomes and more at His presence. You discover that peace is not the absence of uncertainty, it is the confidence that God is still in control, even when nothing makes sense. Every stripped season becomes a sacred exchange. Your reliance on the seen for an unshakable confidence in the unseen. In the absence of visible support, your spiritual senses awaken. You begin to recognize the subtle fingerprints of God in places you once overlooked. You see provision where there was once only lack, guidance where there was once confusion, and favor where there was once resistance. God tests trust to make it unbreakable, because only faith that has been tested can carry the weight of destiny. When you learn to stand without evidence, you prove that your foundation is not the blessing itself, but the God who gives it. When all these signs begin to converge, the silence, the detachment, the stirring, the isolation, and the testing, do not be afraid. You are standing on the edge of divine manifestation. Everything that feels uncertain is actually unfolding according to a higher design. God never breaks without the intention to build, and He never takes without preparing to give far greater. This is the sacred rhythm of transformation, the breaking that leads to blessing, the pruning that produces fruit, the waiting that births wisdom. You may not see it now, but heaven has already moved on your behalf. Every delay is divine timing. Every loss is hidden gain. Every silence is God speaking in a different language. When you feel the world growing smaller around you, it's because your spirit is expanding within you. Trust the process even when it hurts. Yield to the stillness even when you long for movement. Rest in the knowing that God is not just working for you, He is working in you. For the blessing that is coming is not ordinary. It is transformational. It will not just change your circumstances. It will redefine your capacity to carry His presence. You are not waiting for the blessing to appear. You are becoming the vessel strong enough to hold it. What you have endured was never wasted. It was divine construction. And when God finally releases what He has prepared, you will understand why He took His time. The waiting will make sense. The silence will become sacred, and the pain will feel like purpose. So lift your heart, quiet your fear, and steady your faith. The signs are clear. Heaven is aligning. The very things that seem to be falling apart are actually falling into place. You are not forgotten. You are being fashioned. The same God who began this good work in you will bring it to completion, and when the blessing comes, it will carry the unmistakable fragrance of divine timing and grace.